All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we can go around the table, starting with Mrs. Bites, just say your name.
Carol Bites.
Dane O'Neill.
Connor Kurtz.
Rob Hurley.
Didn't say your name. Sorry. Dave Rathgate.
Thank you. Well, I already got some humor coming into the meeting tonight, and we're only a minute in. From the administration, we have Mr. Hurley representing them. Is Mr. Harris going to be here?
He's at facilities.
He's at facilities. Wow, they get Mr. Harris and Mr. Small, but we have Mr. Hurley, so we're happy. We're happy as it is. Also, one member of the public, Mr. Martino, joining us. Procedures for public participation, Mr. Martino being the only member. We'll keep it pretty open. Just feel free to speak up. When it comes to your question, though, let me see. The DBHS study halls, if any board member has anything they want this committee to investigate, I think it's fine asking that member to participate in that discussion because that's the purpose of discussing it. But moving on now to item 3, C&I welcome and reflection. Welcome to Mr. Okus O'Neill. Welcome to the committee. I wanted, though, to spend a few minutes just reflecting on the work we did last year and kind of brainstorming how this committee operates and what we think works well, what doesn't, what we'd like to change. So does anybody have any feedback looking at what we did last year, what we can do this year, any big topics we'd like to discuss, anything that you think we're omitting? I had a thought that maybe we should focus a little bit more on, we never really talked about special education, and it might be helpful to get a presentation from Mrs. Mikowski as to what's going on that front, and I'd like to include that for a future meeting. Anything beyond that, anything that you'd like us to focus a little bit more on, a little bit less on? If not, I mean, that's fine, but I thought it might be good to just reflect a little bit on our own work as a committee.
I'd like to continue to develop the opportunities at the high school, but I think that's still all with the pathways and dual enrollments, and that's been pretty much my principal time I've been on the committee.
All right. Well, at the end of the meeting, maybe we can reflect a little bit more if there's anything.
That's why I will say I like how you kind of keep the maybe like Mr. O'Neill's to do
the action items,
so that we got on the agenda now for our regular meeting, kind of keep it. So.
I'm glad. I mean, we've only been doing this now for a few months, but it's really helped me keep track of what we've been talking about, what we are continuing, what's been resolved, and then even at the bottom we list what is everything that's been resolved since we started keeping track. All right, great. So, at-risk kindergarten pilot program update, Mr. Hurley.
Okay, what I'd like to do is I'd kind of like to walk through this binder with you, some different areas. I'd like to start off, if you take a look at the binder itself, there's a tab that says goals. The goals of at-risk kindergarten they're very measurable, as you can see. We want to get 100% of the students will be on grade level in reading when entering first grade. 100% will be on grade level in math. You can see that also as a goal. Also, we want to develop their social skills, which are barriers to learning for a lot of kids. And we want 100% of our students there also. And then in terms of long term, we want to measure also for us where are we at the end of third grade? Are these results that we get sustainable? And finally, we want a reduction of students in need of special education services. That would also be a measurable goal for us. If you go over to the Key Performance Indicators tab, You can see the different measures that there's many different assessments, including Dibbles, Fontes and Pinnell. We have our in-house kindergarten screenings, our report cards, Houghton Mifflin cumulative math assessments, PSSA scores, a whole variety, and including a social skills checklist that we will be using to measure it. For most of these different goals, we'll be measuring where the students are at the beginning of the program, where the students are at around January, where they are at the end of the at-risk program at kindergarten, so we can see if we're actually having an effect on the students. If we're going to invest the time, the money, and the resources into this, we certainly want to get measurable results from that. We'll also, in a long-term sense, we want to keep track of this data, and where are these kids at third grade? Did we maintain this? We want to take a look at, now keep in mind we are comparing apples to oranges, just different groups of kids can be different, but we also want to measure the number of kids in need of special education services. A lot of times kids are identified for special education as a result of reading needs. Certainly with this program we want to try to address that there. So we have some clear measurables we want to hit short-term and long-term for this. And I'll let you, there's examples of those that are kindergarten teachers like Dibbles and some of the other things that we have in assessments. You can page through that on your own. They're not the entire assessments, they're just examples, and that was certainly in the presentation that was provided to you several months ago. If you go to the student identification tab, the students will be identified for the at-risk program using the Brigance assessment. In the Brigance assessment, a student who scores below 60 is considered at risk. You can see this year, and this, according to our elementary principals, this is very consistent, but you can see we had about 42 students who are considered at risk. This is a research-based assessment. It's not something that Pennsylvania just made up. It's a nationally normed type of thing. So basically, we have about 3 sections of kids who are at risk going into kindergarten, and we'd like to try to address that with this program itself. When you look at the Brigance and also our historical data, and this is the first year we used the Brigance this year, but we used Dibbles before. Really what we're getting from a geography standpoint is about 2/3 of the kids who are at risk are on the Monocacy-Birdsboro side and about 1/3 are on the Amity side. Just to give you a rough ballpark, that can change. Different groups of kids are different, but when you look at the historical data and you also the internal expertise that we have, that is the case there. If you go to the student day tab, you can see what a typical day for an at-risk student will look like. You can see there'll be about 180 minutes of instruction devoted to the ELA block. About 40 minutes of instruction will deal with specials. Primarily what we're talking about right now is physical education, and then we're going to build in social skills through using our guidance counselors to address very specifically the barriers to learning. Again, some of the behaviors that allow kids to be successful in school, like paying attention, how to ask questions. Not all kids come to school with those skills. Some do, some don't. So we'll have explicit instruction happening there. About 120 minutes will be devoted to the math block. If you go down on that page, you can see how it compares to current half-day kindergarten. Okay, and you can see the time, and very clearly the amount of time of instruction increases dramatically. And obviously, through the increased instruction, we think we can get some results with the program itself. Turn to the tab for projected expenditures. This will take a little bit of explaining. What I have here, it depends on the number of sections we will run, what the cost of the program itself will be. Ideally, this is a pilot program, obviously. We want to see if we get results. Ideally, we have right now, we'd like to have 3 sections of this. What we need is we're going to need about 1.5 additional teachers than what we have, because kindergarten, there are half days, so we'd have to add 3 sections. We'd have to add additional staff of 3. Now, whether or not that can be found in the district, that depends on enrollment and where we're at that point in time. I will not make any promises to that effect because I don't know. It's too early in the game to say, oh, we'll be able to find it here or be able to find it there. These are real expenses, guys. I put teacher salary and benefits because the benefits component is there so that we're being transparent with the whole thing. Also, this program, we should have an aide in there full-time to make this work effectively, and that also includes salary and benefits. So those are the real costs of running the program itself. I'll explain. I'll come back to the transportation piece because transportation depends on how many sections we run itself. I put some money there in for training. I would like some money for training because I'd really like our kindergarten teachers trained in the LETRS program. It is mostly people who receive the LETRS training are reading specialists. Because a lot of these students can be kids with serious reading needs, I'd like to put a little bit, if we're going to do it, let's do it right, and let's get the best training that's available. In my book, that is among the best training that's out there. There are others, but that's an example. If we can find it locally, I think it's well worth. If we're going to invest this much money into the program, it's definitely worth it.
Well, it's only a fraction.
Absolutely.
The overall cost.
And another piece of this is we do want to set aside a little bit of money for parent workshops, because one of the things we want to do is we also want to help parents in terms of how they can help their child be successful. So we want to create some workshops. We use our guidance counselors, our reading specialists, and our kindergarten teachers to develop a few workshops there. Again, that's not a lot of money, but I think it's well worth it. As a side note, one of the things I'd like to do as an expectation, or we'd like parents to volunteer, if you might say, or maybe we might even set up an expectation that for a child to be in this program that we'd like a parent to be volunteering so that they actually have part of it, buy into the program itself. We're providing this extra service. Can they volunteer to help us? Obviously, there will have to be exceptions made to that, but we really want parental involvement in this. And I also think that's a key factor into making the program work. So I think that helps us in doing that. And if there's an exception where a parent's working 3 jobs and can't do it, of course, we'll use judgment and something like that. But I think that's going to be an expectation of any program that we do. And then just some curriculum planning. I think it's worth it for a couple days. We did have full day kindergarten years ago, as you know. We'll be using that curriculum. But also, I think we want to fine tune things according to the current standards and stuff like that. So again, that's small money there. 3 sections that'll give you an idea of what it would cost. If we were to run 2 sections, what we would have to do, based on our historical data, what we're looking at is it's about 2/3, 1/3 in terms of where our students are coming from what side of the district. And again, that can change. If we were to run 2 sections, we would end up busing students from this side of the district over there. If we run 3 sections, we could have 1 section over here at Amity, we could have 2 over at Monocacy, Birdsboro on that side. If we were to run 2 sections, we'd probably need to bus those students because we probably have about 10 students, and we don't have 10 extra spaces on our minivans that travel across the bus at the district. So that's where that comes from. I got to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of spending the money on busing. I'd rather spend it on kids and the program itself, but it needs to be there.
Now, I have a quick question on the sections. Mm-hmm. Is it 1 section per building or 1 section district-wide?
Well, it depends on which option we choose.
Well, for the first column.
On the first column, and I was getting to that, if we do 1 section, that would be 1 section for the whole district. So if we did 1 section, I would say our transportation cost is 0, and let me explain why. When we look at the historical data, it would say we had 10 students on that side of the district over there. We have 5 over here. From talking to our transportation director, we can find 5 spots on our buses. We have a few minivans that go across the district for special education and other needs. We can find 5 seats there. That's why 1 would have 0 transportation costs. 2 we'd have to get a whole bus, which that's why it costs $37,945. 3 we do 1 section here over in Amity and 2 over in Monocacy to cover our needs. So that's kind of how you look at and how we would break down the expenses of this program.
1 section being about 15.
About 15 kids.
So basically, you're taking the lowest scoring kids for 1 section.
Ideally, that's what we'd like to do, is we'd like to take the lowest scoring in the district. There is certainly a model, and I didn't put it on here, where you could just do 1 section here over in Amity, 1 over there. But the reality is, based on historical data, you're probably not going to get your lowest kids if you do approach that. So my recommendation would be if you ended up doing the 2 section option, that we end up doing the transportation so that we get the lower kids. I'd like to see us do 3 sections. I think that's best. I'll take anything you guys are willing to fund, though. I think the program will work, and I think we can get measurable results for you. I'm very confident of that. So I'll take anything you got, and then I'd like to take a look at the results from that point in time.
On the results, mm-hmm. Who will be the person responsible for monitoring the performance of this program?
Me.
Okay.
Yep. If you look, and I can provide you with even more reason, I didn't want to bore you with too much. I put 3 or 4 research articles in here that just give you the foundation and the reasons why a program like this from a theoretical perspective may work. You're welcome to look at that on your own time. And again, I can provide you with much more. I know Melanie, who's an expert in early childhood, can provide you with tons and tons of literature in that regard also. But that's just a sampling of some of the research that's out there on the topic itself.
So, but first of all, I think this is good work. Getting to see something that's kind of comprehensive here, so I appreciate that. But one of the things that I think in order for the board for it to make sense is, how does it help us financially or not? Is the question. Okay, because there are a fair number of studies that will say the half day, versus full day by 3rd grade they equal out. Mm-hmm. But what the studies really, I do see a piece in here, but what I see lacking in these studies are some of the focus on the at-risk kids specifically, whether that helps them, whether we do see results in AEPs. The special ed kids. Whether we do see later on results down the road, whether you can go on to graduation rates, stuff like that, and whether we actually do see. Obviously, you could say that those kids are getting more opportunities, probably equating to what parents who did send their kids to pre-K and do spend more time at home working with the kids. Okay, so I think the full day will give them the equal opportunity in that sense. But I guess the question is, does it really work out to help the district dollars and cents?
I can't make a promise in that regard. I wouldn't want to make a promise in that regard. We're hoping that we're going to reduce the number, and we're going to track that data piece. We're going to reduce the number of kids that will be in need of special education services. That's one of the outcomes that we have here. One of the things I think you bring up, and it's one of the reasons why we have this data point in there, we do want to see how the kids are doing, not just right at the end of kindergarten, but also how are we doing 3 years down the road? Are we able to maintain and sustain the benefits that we got from the program itself? I think that's an important data piece that we need to have for the program.
The other piece you can't quantify is by taking some of the at-risk kids and giving them that extra attention. Does that then allow the kindergarten teacher does that give them now the ability to maybe spend some more time focusing on the other kids that maybe they weren't able to? You really can't quantify that.
Yeah, that's a difficult piece to quantify. It's actually an interesting piece, and I guess the way you would look at that I guess you could do it if you. That would be tough to quantify because there's so many different variables that would go into that. Whether they could go up in scores and Dibble scores and there's a lot of variables that could go into that. That would be difficult to determine if that was the sole reason why that happened, because we're trying to improve our teaching and instruction every single year, and so to isolate in terms of what variable, that would probably be a difficult thing to quantify. In part because these are young kids, and so believe it or not, we don't test these kids as much as we tested other age groups and things like that.
That's good.
Yes, absolutely.
Rob, I have a question about you have the data here on the student identification piece, which essentially says there's 42 right now based on the current programs.
Yeah, that's what we would have had this year using that. Right. We're assuming it's similar type of data.
Is there, could you add a level that's like 60 to 65 or something? I'm curious about how much pushback you're going to get from parents whose kids are 61 and are saying, how arbitrary is 60 as the threshold for entering this program?
I wouldn't call it, and I'll let Melanie chime in if she wants to here. I wouldn't call it arbitrary. Brigance is a very good assessment. From speaking to our principals this year, it's been very accurate in terms of these kids that they're identifying are the same kids that the teachers are picking out as being at risk. Now, are we going to get, we are going to get pushback in it. This is, if we do this, parents whose kid doesn't get in, I'm sure we're going to get pushback, but if we don't have the space, we don't have the space.
Whatever the number is.
Right.
We're willing to dig our heels in
Of
on
course,
that.
I mean, if they don't want their kid, then they're not forcing them to. It's voluntary. So if they don't want, they feel their child is they want. Some parents do want half day. They want their child still coming home.
My only point is just differentiating between a 60 and a 61. You know what I'm saying? Like if the data says that there's not very many kids in that. In the 60 to 65 range, then maybe it isn't a big issue. But if it turns out that of the number between 61 and 87, which is 69, if 29 of them are between 60 and 65, we might have a problem, right? Whereas if, so I'm just curious what the, how many of them are close to qualifying.
I can get you that data, and I'll let you know.
If I can interject too, I can tell you from an AUC standpoint, the data was dead on this year. It was amazing how much of a predictor of student success it was, because we are seeing exactly where the need is. It's very accurate as far as the analysis of the students' needs go. And I just look at it from a common sense, logical standpoint. If we're looking at our most needy students and they're getting just over 2 hours a day to get ready for first grade, which is what we're trying to prepare them for. Now we're going to give our most needy students 2.5 times that, because you figure all the bus runs are out there and all that.
Yeah.
Now they're getting 2.5 times that. Their preparedness for first grade is going to be dramatically increased. So the odds of their success are going to be increased.
I'm not questioning whether I completely agree that I think the program is going to work. My only issue is differentiating the kids that qualify versus the kids that don't qualify. And like I said, I don't know enough about the Brugance assessment to know how many questions difference is between a 60 and a 61. Like, I don't know, and I don't know if the teachers would. I'm assuming that teachers aren't so good that they can differentiate the future needs of somebody who gets a 60 versus the future needs of somebody who gets a 61. You know what I mean? So if they think that one of them is likely a future trouble spot, and they probably think that both are. And that's my only concern, is just that, I mean, I understand that at some point you have to set a threshold, and it is, ultimately that number is going to be arbitrary in the sense that somebody could always be right on the threshold and not qualify, right? So there's never going to be a right answer. I just want to make sure that we're not opening ourselves up to there being 20 of them if we can help it.
Right? I may have a partial answer for you, and it's very arbitrary. Mr. Hurley and I discussed this a couple days ago, and I've sort of been the advocate of this since a year ago, and first met with the teachers that presented this, and then met with the teachers, Mr. Hurley and Mrs. Hefner, to try and get this off the ground. Your presentation tonight, Mr. Hurley, is slightly different than what we discussed. What we discussed was 2 sections, one in Amity, one in Monocacy, with a limit of 15 kids in each class. And what I thought we talked about was the first 15 that qualified and signed up, that's who got in it, because this is a test. This is a pilot program. This isn't a full-fledged at-risk kindergarten until we determine if it's worthwhile. And even that, you were talking a 3-year pilot. If you're not going to assess till 3rd grade, you have to have a 4-year pilot. So, I mean, you need kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade to complete your assessment. Because I'm also looking at the money. I mean, I want this. I think it's a great idea. But until we know that it's worthwhile, I don't see having more than 1 section in each, which if we did that, cost about $104,000. Because you don't need any transportation then, because you've got kids going to Amity, you've got kids going to Monocacy. You've got 1 class there and 1 class here.
Correct. We could. That is an approach that we could take. What the only negative of that approach would be, and that would eliminate the busing, which I would agree, which is a good piece. The one piece we have to watch out for is that we're not going to get our lowest kids in the district if we do that. If we did approach it.
But it's about time in this district and in this country that we put some responsibility on the parent. If you advertise this, that the first 15 kids that are registered tested and qualify are the ones that get in. It's up to the parents to get their kids registered and tested.
On that note as well, if we are doing a pilot program, and it is, and I was going to ask this question, is selection based on is it the lowest people who score in this Bergan's assessment will be offered spots, or is it first come, first served if your score is below threshold?
I'd like to do it the lowest, but I'm open for any.
I'm just saying.
Board's direction on this. Any way we approach it,
I wouldn't want to.
We'd like to get it in place, guys.
My reason for saying this is because the timetable for doing this, I wouldn't want, like, if my child scored a 59, if I had a child who scored a 59, I wouldn't want to be offered a spot and then you had 15 kids scoring 68 or below, and then my spot is no longer there.
Once we offer a spot, then they have that spot.
Well, how are you going to know unless everybody registers at the same time?
That's what's going to happen. We're going to do the Brigance. We're going to have to do the Brigance. We're looking at probably in May-ish, and then once we've done that test, if someone registers after that point in time, to Rich's point here, once if they haven't registered, if they come in August, we're just not going to be able to offer them that service because we have to plan for this.
So
to Rich's point there.
And the teachers tell me they register all the way up until the first day of school.
That's an accurate statement. That's a very accurate
statement. So you're not necessarily going to get the lowest scores.
Yeah. You're correct. You won't be 100%.
The ones that have tested prior to your cutoff.
Yes, we are. You're right.
I just had 2 registered last week, and they were upset when they couldn't get the session they wanted. That's mid-year.
It's just the
you can't choose. I mean, all I'm saying, Russ, is for a pilot, you need to have limits. And once you determine that this is actually worthwhile, which you're not going to know for a couple of years, then maybe you make it full-fledged, as many kids as qualified. But you don't know that yet.
And I think to Mr. Martino's point, if we do one section each area, if Amity does not have enough kids below 60, then we do bus some from Monocacy. It might only be 3, and then we don't have to. Then we can utilize the van, and then we can have 2 sections. I don't have to worry about that.
I can work with that.
Wasted $37,000 a bus.
I can work with that, guys.
Like I said, I want the program.
I know.
But I'm also looking at the cost, and if we can balance the two.
Absolutely, fair enough. Very fair.
My concern is if we run 2 sections, which seems like a great idea at the onset, and it'd be 51.8 times 2, but if you had one in Amity and one in Roseboro Monocacy, basically 100% of the at-risk kids on Amity would be served, but 50% of the ones on the other side would be served. Because you said the composition is 2/3.
Historically.
We're only offering them one section. But we're offering one section on the Amity side, which would accommodate, theoretically, all the kids.
Dave actually had a good idea, too. Maybe we could bus those kids on the small bus from the other side and bring them over.
I like that idea.
That might work.
You just get the whole pool of them, take the 30 most at risk, and make sure they're all served, even if it means those seats, those extra seats, without adding a bus. Are we on the same?
I could live with that. That would work for me.
How many? What, 5?
Be 5, probably 5 slots, so we can get 5 on the bus.
That would make it
different buses.
One thing that
I just can't do 10.
So then, in actuality, you would have 2/3, 1/3. 15,
exactly. Yeah. I like that.
That works for me.
Something I really like about this proposal is that the parental involvement is known up front, and it's something you're expected to commit to.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's one of the problems with serving some of these students. You need to have, like, I'm just thinking back, they say that reading to a child is the #1 thing you could do for that child to advance their cognitive functioning beyond what it naturally is. So if you have those parents committing to being involved at the outset, I think that could be really powerful. We had a lot of public come in after the start of the meeting, so I'll say if you do have a comment, please just come up to the podium and state your name and address. But, all right. Mrs. Hogue. I don't know.
Lori Hogue, Douglasville. I was planning on coming up, but I teach a kindergarten enrichment program here in Danny Boone. So the kids leave the Danny Boone School District and they come from the enrichment. And most of the kids that I have, it's an extra for them that they would be fine whether they probably came or not, the parents want to get extra. However, I do see those at-risk kids. I emailed Mrs. Martina this year about a young man who was at risk, and the parents were fighting with the school district to get him in all day. It is definitely needed. There are students, and it's not about getting them ahead, it's about getting them to where everybody else is. That's what you're trying to do. So I really propose that this seriously needs to be taken into consideration. Sounds like you're all on board. It's definitely something that needs to happen in our district to make sure that we can keep kids on track, and we're not increasing that 16% of no graduation rate we currently have, and that we have kids on track the rest of their years through school and being successful. And I know the kindergarten teachers that we have are awesome, and they do their best to educate every child, but when they are spread so thin and they have a lot of students in their class at risk, it's hard to differentiate for those students. So if you removed 5 of them, and they still only had that one child at 61%, they could surely give a lot more of attention to that one child in their classroom that's at the 61, and the rest that were below 60 would get that special attention in that class. So keep that in mind, and I really think this is a very important program for our district. If we can't offer all day, this is definitely an opportunity to do something different.
Thank you, Mrs. Hogan. On that note, thank you to Mrs. Murgatroyd and Mrs. Latimer for spearheading this. We really are thankful for that, and you guys are some of the most valuable players, I guess, when it comes to getting this working. So thank you.
Can I ask?
All right.
You've heard the discussion. Pro, con?
Not to put you on the spot. I mean,
I love the discussion, and we're very thankful for all that you're saying. And I'm agreeing with him, like, I'm excited, whatever, if we're willing to do anything, it's absolutely better than none of it. Of course, we as teachers want to reach them all, that's our life goal. Just one thought, and I know we want to make things at both schools. On a teacher's end, we're very collaborative. We love to work together since you're the other come. So like the idea, is there possibly there's 2 sections? If you're busing 1/3, what does it matter? Even though it's all kindergarten, this is going to be a complete different picture of the day and what's being done. So it is nice to have collaboration. So if there's 2 sections, there's 2 full big people who work together as a team, it would be on the teacher's end. Like working together. If there's
So
2
they were in the
full
same
classes for
school.
planning, you're planning, you're preparing. What worked for you? I tried this. We kindergarten teachers, I know all teachers do, but kindergarten teachers, and we eat lunch together every day, and we discuss our morning, and then we redo it for the afternoon. That's just who we are, and the 3 of us sit together and think and talk. And if there's 1 full person here and 1 full person there, yes, they're teaching kindergarten, but they're going to be starting at a different point. We need to step 10 steps back before day 1 of kindergarten. These are kids that need pre-kindergarten with the social skills piece that he's speaking. There's a lot of pieces that are going to be extra that they're going to get and need. So if the 2 people have one another to support each other, it would be helpful.
In the same building.
In the same building. If we're going to bus 1/3, why is there one man, if this is a possibility? Just a thought.
The concern I heard is that Mr. Hurley said he would bus 5 kids for 3, bus the entire section, bus them.
But I'm saying there's 2/3
You would
here,
have bused it
1/3 here. So if you're discussing,
No, there's more than 5 in that. According to these stats, there's I believe 12 this year that will be in that. So we can't bus 12 for free. We have to have a bus. What they were saying was they could probably bus 5 from Birdsboro Monocacy to Amity for free.
just at the lowest forefront.
But of the whole district or just Amity?
What they're saying is, based on this year's numbers, there's probably room for 4 or 5 more in Amity.
So you could pull just those, that small number.
I have a thought here. Would it be possible, you mentioned there's going to be more time for specials for these students. Is that going to be more each day? Is it how is that going to compare? I'm wondering, is there time that we could build into the schedule to allow these teachers, in addition to the planning prep time to collaborate, maybe phone calls or Skype conversations? I'm not sure.
The teachers will have a prep period that they do in their contract, and that's the time where they can.
That's the time they would do that during. Would they overlap though? Is what I'm saying. Like if collaboration may be an issue, is there a way that we can help foster that collaboration? It might not be in the same building, but is there any way that we could?
I don't want to tie Melanie's hands in terms of master scheduling and Dane's hands, because we're tight in terms of our master schedule, and it would be to speculate on that would be tough to do.
Well, try to this being a pilot program is going to constantly need to be fine-tuned. So I think that collaboration is important. But regardless, no matter how it's set up, there's going to need to be meetings outside the school day.
May I make a suggestion? I think one of the things we want to do is we want to dedicate some of our in-service time where there'll be built-in time where they can collaborate, because we want to, as you said, the program's going to evolve over time, and we want them, and so we'll have to build in some time there, certainly.
Yeah.
Mr. Kurtz, I want to just, on the 16% dropout rate, I want to weigh in on this. So as we dig into the numbers at the high school, identified that essentially about half of our problems math-based. Okay, about 16%, and we're aware of that when we have a plan moving forward with middle school and high school. That's growing. The other large chunk of the problem is the transiency problem. So though I think full-day kindergarten piece is noble, it certainly will help those students develop. The kids that we're really seeing show up in the dropout number are kids who have moved into the district after 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, in and out. So building, and this is the conversation we're having in high school and middle school, and how do we build a transition program? I believe Penny's also having that conversation down. How are we transitioning kids into the district who are really not our homegrown kids? That is a major part. So I know they're a little bit separate, but since the issue came up, I don't know that you're going to see an impact in that 16% based on this piece. You will see an impact. Kids are better, more prepared, and completely know the right thing to do. Just let's keep those kids this advocate.
Okay.
Just a quick question too on the benchmark testing. Would that be benchmark in the sense of authentic benchmark testing, where they would take at the 3 points, the end of year test, all 3 points to measure the progress? That may be naive, but that was always my understanding of a benchmark test.
We want to see where there are different points during the year.
Taking the same test?
No, the tests aren't exactly the same. That they would test the same concepts, but they wouldn't be exactly the same.
And what would that test be? What would it be called?
What's that? Well, there's a bunch of them. We're doing Fontaine Spinel, we're doing Dibbles, we're doing a whole bunch of different ones that are in there.
But these 3 specifically identified, through the course of the year, what would they be? Some combination?
We have what's that? Yeah, those tests there are the tests that we would be using for the program itself.
It says benchmark 1, benchmark 2, and benchmark 3.
Yeah, it would be all those assessments. That's what we're talking about. You're looking at the timeline, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The Fontaine Spinel is the only one that doesn't have a pretest because the kids aren't reading yet. The kids in this program are obviously not coming into kindergarten reading. That would be the only one, so that test doesn't, that's not going to help us at that point in time.
If I can be presumptive, if this committee votes to do 2 sections tonight, we can at least get it to committee of the whole for February, so the full board can have a good discussion on it and see whether we actually have to forward on it or not.
Is that a motion to approve the pilot at-risk kindergarten pilot program for 2 sections? Is there a second?
One more question. Would they both be held at Monocacy then in the middle?
Well, I think that's what we were just talking about.
And the economics of that would work, that there wouldn't be extra busing that we think we could.
Well, if we hold 2 at Monocacy, we're probably going to be in a situation where we have to bus.
Well,
let's explain that to Karen.
So either we do 2 at Monocacy, then like 5 now we could go. That would be 0 cost, right?
Correct.
Or if we had 1 and 1 and 5, then 5 additional from Monocacy could come over that. So
we're just saying, as long as the motion includes.
Well, why don't you give us the flexibility to do it
I think that's a discussion we should probably have once.
Depending on where the kids come from, guys.
Then I would be okay with.
As long as we're not including transportation in there, I guess is what.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to include transportation.
Then I second that motion.
Okay.
That gives us the flexibility to put them where.
Is there any objection? All right, then that recommendation is made unanimously.
Can I just suggest that Ron can write this up for the committee of the whole meeting? Bring it up to explain what was just discussed and have on there an end date because it's got to be reassessed in 4 years.
Yes.
Be voted on again whether to continue as a full-fledged program as opposed to being a pilot.
Okay.
Additionally, as data begins to come in that will be used to evaluate this program, just a word of advice would be to to keep track of it and report back to the committee not as often as possible. But I remember when I joined the board asking for information, but people were scrambling trying to assemble what data points I thought should have been tracked all along. But just a thought.
Next.
All right.
If there's some way to track those IEP numbers,
Yeah.
that would really be crucial.
Yeah, that's right, that's specific.
That would be great, especially.
The thing is,
Yeah.
in a sample size of 30, the data is not terribly reliable in terms of IP usage anyway. I'm not saying that there's no value in it, but the sample size of 30 is so small.
I think Shelley might be able to go back and we have all the data, and we only had a few years of.
Yeah.
I understand it, but my point is
60,
that
90, maybe 90 kids every 10 years.
I'm just talking purely mathematically. Right? I mean, I have a master's in applied stats. I'm telling you that 30 is a
Sample
big
size,
enough
not
number
big
to draw
enough.
a meaningful conclusion.
What's the
from.
number you need? Like 200? I forget because I took stats and I couldn't
Depends
remember.
on how big on what the interval.
Yeah.
Yeah, on what the confidence interval you want. 120 is generally considered the magic number.
All right.
I just want to, I enjoy stats as well. 495 is the sample size for plus or minus 3. But we're talking about, these kids are specific kids. These are not random samples kids. These are targeted high-risk students. So we could make some inference that if we had 4 years, a third of a year, 120 students, and we saw action, progress, moving the needle one way or another, that would be enough. I think it would give us a directional lead.
I'm not disputing. I didn't say that there's no value in it. I'm simply saying.
All right. Well, now that we made that recommendation, I want to move on to item 5, which ties into item 4. Item 5 is kindergarten registration. I saw a link went up on the website to get registration underway, and I remember this has been on our to talk about list, our future items, just in terms of, I remember it being an issue in previous years that registration was either the beginning or the ending. It was too soon or it overlapped too much with the school. I forget what the specific issue was, but it was something I know we wanted to revisit. But on that note, how does kindergarten registration tie into the at-risk program?
Well, right now, the kindergarten students are going to begin registering in March for their official registration. We have someone, Marion Price, does our centralized registration, which we switched to last year. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we did that, just data integrity and things of that nature. But it won't happen. You won't see that until the spring when we actually test the kids. That's when we're going to start identifying the kids for that particular piece. The parts that we're collecting in March, basically we're getting the state required medical documents, we're getting proof of residency, things of that, all of those things. That's what we're working on during that time.
Now, is there any way we can combat this late registration? Is there any way communication with these families? Or
no, we get that no matter what. I mean, that's been happening for the last 15 years. I mean, certainly we can always try to communicate better and the best that we can. Some of that's transient. Sometimes people move in during the summer, and it is what it is there.
And that's something I want to get to with item 6, a new resident information packet. But on kindergarten registration, does anybody have anything? I just wanted to make sure we didn't neglect talking about it. If nobody has anything to discuss, we can move on. No reason to. All right. Well, number 6, I have on here new resident information packet. And I was, this is a thought that I had, when a family moves into the Downey Boone Area School District, does the district have any real communication with them? Is there any outreach? I don't think there necessarily is. Perhaps there's something we could put together, get it on the website, distribute it to realtors in the area. It says, like, welcome to the Downey Boone Area School District. This is your community school. This is when kindergarten registration begins. This is how to register your child for classes in Daniel Boone. Here's our football schedule. Like, just kind of a way to welcome them to the community.
Yeah, actually, it's a work in progress right now for us. Jim's actually reached out to several local realtors, and we've gathered information from each of our buildings with different highlights, things that we know, and then we're going to share that with them. Yeah, and so we've put that together. Actually, we used some of that information. We just went to a new teacher recruitment fair up at BCIU the other day. We actually used some of that information there to try to recruit subs and stuff like that to come to our district. So.
Again, it's a PR piece, really, and it's to just, I think, well, one is obviously to communicate information, but it's also trying to turn this district into a district with prestige, and a more professional operation, I'd say. So I'd be interested to see what that nice final product looks like when it's put together.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that?
All right.
Good idea, thank you.
Next up is employee recognition, and this was something that we've been discussing now for a few months, and I believe Mr. Harris said at the last meeting back in November, not even the December meeting, that he'd have something within a few weeks on the employee recognition front. I was hopeful to hear a report tonight on that. Do you have anything?
I can share some information.
If we wanted a program ready to move forward.
And actually, he's changed gears a little bit on this, and where we're at right now is the district. The program he originally developed was going to cost the district some money. He's in the process of redoing that to a different way that will provide recognition without costing the district any money. So there's been a little bit of a change there. But next meeting, we'll be in a good shape to present that to you.
Okay. Anything else on employee recognition? Anything for Mr. Hurley to take back? All right. Next up, this is Mr. Martino sent out a list of questions regarding some high school issues, and I have up on this now a discussion of those questions, and more specifically, I guess, or more broadly, study halls, class sizes, and staffing for study halls. And this is something we've talked about for a while in this committee, and I don't feel like it's been adequately resolved, and it may be a challenge to get to the point where I'd like to be at least, but I think it's something, I don't think we've made sufficient progress on this front yet. So I'll turn this part over to Mr. Martino, I guess, to express his questions, and then for Mr. McKnight to respond, and maybe do a little, we can have a nice discussion. I think that would be good.
Rather than repeating the questions, Mr. McKnight.
Sure. So I received, I think, 9 questions to answer, and I think they've been kind of restatements of things we've been talking about, so it brings it to a nice, kind of concise piece.
Can you recite the questions?
I will.
Okay, good, because I don't have the email.
So the first one was, could I please update the April 22nd spreadsheet to reflect current information? And I forwarded that, you should have all received. I said, what I asked is that I prefer that it always go to my direct reports, which is Mr. Hurley and Mr. Martino, and they distribute what they do. So, is that what I said? Oh, yeah, I mean, just Mr. Harris, yeah. So, on that first Excel you received, you have 5 tabs. You have a master schedule. Master schedule extract. Little 40 in it. I remember that at race time. But anyway, master schedule extract has all the courses we have in the high school. Tab 2 are instructional courses. Tab 3, online courses. Tab 4 is study halls on that first Excel you have. And then Tab 5 is special ed courses at the high school. I think we need to differentiate when you look at it. I know you guys want to look at the numbers a little bit. It helps to kind of see them in different categories. Some things we have some control over, and some things we don't have very much control over. Special ed, state, mandates, things like that we don't. Also, could we give you teacher duty roster? I sent you a second Excel on that. One is study halls, exclusive on the one tab. Second tab is all in the teacher duties. The information that says the information received from DBA that some study halls have been combined, but not all, as they are correct, and if so, why haven't they been combined? The DBA is not correct on that. All study halls operate on a large-scale model with a single proctor. Unless they exceed 70 students, then it's 2 proctors. So everything is in that realm, and you can see that on one of the averages I sent you. But to give you the quick question number 4, in study halls, you have to combine how many students in each. How many teachers? Study hall average is 74 students. Not all are 74, it's an average. We have as high as 113. We have as low as, I think, one actually has only 13. Has to do with the lunch period, 9th graders, and 4th period. Some restrictions with that. And I said, when we go over 70, then we assign 2 people. And a lot of times they will split them out into 2 separate spaces. But by and large, they'll be in 2 LGIs that you see next to the auditorium. One in the old chorus band room in the new wing, and then down in the old cafeteria. Those are the 4 stations with tons of kids. So, I think one of these questions had originally come from what is going on in the study halls, and I think that was a good question. And since that, for those who are here, we addressed that with the staff, made some minor alterations, so I'd be interested to hear if there's feedback down the road about what those study halls are like, because they're not to be silent, but they are to be quiet. And so we've had that dialogue with the staff.
What were the changes, and what was the original, and now what is the...
Well, I mean, it changed just about enforcing the nature of the quiet study halls. Like one of the things I learned when I worked at Reading is if you're going to sit in a study hall, as a teacher, you should never sit in the front of the room, because as soon as you go down your computer, all those kids see that and they do their thing. If you sit in the back, you never know when you're doing anything, and it just changes. So one of the teachers reported back that they made that change, and it was unbelievable. For that, some of the teachers didn't make that change. They chose to just monitor more aggressively. So, like, we're going to watch it for next month. Because since we are stuck having these study halls, they should be productive, whatever that productivity happens to be. Okay. Why are we using teachers? This is question 5. Why are we using teachers in modern study halls instead of teaching? We not currently have paraprofessionals in the high school to do that monitoring. And I said, will we better serve using aides to monitor non-teaching study halls? For me, that's an EBA contract issue, so to speak, for you guys to work out at this level. You guys deal with that, and we implement it once we have the players. So if it's something that happens at the district level or the board level, and say, okay, we're going to have paraprofessionals, we're going to, and I'll be able to do that. But this thing has all kinds of labor pieces tied to it, especially under a status quo piece that we currently are under. So I don't understand the laws, but you guys probably do it at the board level. That would have to be addressed, I think. What is the plan to further reduce study halls? Increasing student enrollment in courses, investigation of research periods in a day, examining the courses that meet more or less than 6 days during the cycle. Okay? So, for example, a science course meets 7 times in the 6-day cycle. That causes some of this unevenness in schedule. I'm not saying it's bad, it just causes it. If you have PE that meets twice in the 6-day cycle, that causes some bubbles. And what you end up having is, for example, if a student has their science, we try to pair phys ed up with that. So 7 plus 2 is 9 out of the 12 spots. That leaves 3 open spots. And kids end up taking, end up in a study hall. Some can fit another elective in there, but it doesn't always come together perfectly, kind of like I used that reference before about Louis Q. Kind of, along that line. This doesn't perfectly match up all the time you like the study halls. There are ways to reduce it, and that would be something that would be a cosmic shift to an 8-period day. Would be one way you could look at it. You could possibly eliminate study halls. But this would take a deep dive on all our parts to make sure that this transition goes well, because you can really mess up the schedule and have kids without courses and requirements and things like that. The other issue when I first came was the conversation around block scheduling. So block scheduling is, and I share with you, is not something that I would recommend academically. There's very sparse evidence that block scheduling helps students learn more efficiently. What it does do is allow you to eliminate study halls. It allows you to implement staff in a more even manner. It allows you to have your science courses, because now you have them in there for 84 minutes, and they can run labs. So it does a lot of things on that side. It also tends to decrease discipline, because most of your discipline happens in exchanging classes. It happens in the hall or in the study halls, changing classes, cafeteria. But again, we will have to work very deep. By comparison, Twin Valley, who runs a block, okay, they have 100 less students than we do, and they have 20 more teachers than we do in high school. And they offer around 20 less courses. Just, I can give you the exact stats. That's about the ballpark. So you really look at it and how we would implement that effect. It would be really not a lot of margin of error for mistake in our schedule.
Okay.
There's more.
No, I was just going to say, we've discussed block scheduling now for years, and I don't want to get going down that road again, because we've determined we're not switching to a block schedule.
Right.
But what are the other...
Okay, number 7 is, are lunch and other non-teaching duties really the best use of our teachers? Well, no, I think we're paying people and they're best at teaching, and they would tell you they'd rather not be doing that. But study halls and cafeteria have to be monitored by people. Could we bring more, return of security guard, equipment? There are things you can do that are more cost effective. But again, EBA type contractual pieces have to work through, I think, a little bit. Would we need as many subs if our teachers were teachers instead of watching students eat lunch? They're unrelated, because our sub issue is driving from subs. When a teacher is absent completely, we don't get someone to pick up that job, so they're not connected to the study hall piece. So if we had teachers with extra, we might be able to plug a little, but they wouldn't be covering their courses. The cost differential between salary of a teacher and aide is considerable, and I agree that's true. Number 8, combining honors and AP courses is a strategy in another district, and was supported by several of the candidates we interviewed for the vacant superintendent position. I heard correctly, you state this idea was rejected by the community. It was last year when I first came in. We proposed, when when proposed by Mr. Kurtz, the opposition came primarily from EBA. If this strategy works, it saves money at the same time. Why wouldn't we adopt it? I'm not sure about the issue of combining. What I originally had proposed was we offer, if we have AP, we don't offer honors. So more kids try to AP. If we don't have an AP course at the end of the trail, then you offer the honors course. So that piece is still.
And my proposal for that, it wasn't exactly combine honors and AP. It was instead have, for any academic course that's offered, have a way to turn that academic course into an honors course by going above and beyond the requirements, writing a research paper, writing.
We've kind of done that. We've kind of done that
Separate
with the piece.
syllabi.
Yeah, separate. So if you're taking basket weaving, and let's say you want to go to college for basket weaving, good luck. But you can take our academic basket weaving course. We don't offer honors basket weaving. But if you love basket weaving so much that you're motivated to go in and write a treatise on basket weaving, go ahead. And you know what? You'll get honors credit for that because you clearly went above and beyond what was expected of you. That was my proposal.
Yeah, we kind of reduced when that issue went from 5 levels to 3 levels.
Yeah.
That kind of has addressed a lot of that issue.
Okay.
And the students who really love basket weaving, they take AP 3D. So they get an opportunity.
Okay.
On a different note, design classes of less than 10 students, the number that we're visiting that issue, we don't know what that's going to be for this upcoming schedule because the schedule was, of course, was just approved. February will be a time when students will sign up, and then we'll get a sense of that, and we'll be able to report to you guys March, April. If this is what it looks like we're populating, we already kind of drive out it. The staff kind of said we're not running under 10 unless special exception. Last year I think we had 4. Right now, Megan and I looked at it on, I think it was Friday, courses that there were 4 or 5 that were originally over 10, and now at 8. Those kids dropped it. That happened. So that's kind of where we're at. We're well under 10, and we're certainly on the 36 we were at last year. But the 4 you approved, plus there's about 4 more where we're at 10, now we're at 8. So
There were a lot of special ed classes, right?
No, this whole conversation excludes special education.
Okay.
As it did last year with the 36. But keep that out. It's kind of apples and oranges conversation.
All right. I have a few thoughts on this. I don't know if, and then we can turn it over to others to comment. Looking at the duty roster, I don't know, I'm a little bit frustrated because if I were a teacher, I would not want to be looking after in-school suspension. I'd want to be in front of students teaching. And as a board member, as a community member, I don't want to pay that that professional salary to somebody who's pretty much just sitting in a room watching over these in-school suspension children, or study hall or lunch. So I would love if we could bring in paraprofessionals and get these teachers back to what they love doing, and that's teaching. So if that's something we can do, and if that's something this committee is able to investigate, I think we owe it to our staff and to our community to do that, to look for the savings and getting those teachers back into classrooms. That was one thing. So I'd love if we could do that. I have some questions, I guess, about classes, and perhaps the best time, I guess, to look at some of these was with the course selection guide. But one in particular is yearbook. I delved into some of these schedules, and I looked at Mrs. Dady's schedule, and I found it was really kind of shocking. Period 1 is proctoring in-school suspension. Period 2 is teaching honors English. Period 3 is proctoring study hall. Period 4 is yearbook class. Period 5 is lunch or prep. Period 6 is prep or lunch. I don't know which is which. Period 7 is honors English. Then period 8 is yearbook, and period 9 is yearbook. And then there's extracurricular yearbook with the stipend attached to it. And I've been complaining about the yearbook courses for a while being academic courses, because I really don't see that as an academic pursuit. When I think of it as being more of a club or an activity, and I don't know, like we have yearbook 1, yearbook 2, and yearbook 3, and we did a good thing in combining those. So now it's not you have a yearbook 3 class with 5 kids in it, you're spreading yearbook 3 out with yearbook 2 and yearbook 1. But even that, I mean, are we teaching like advanced yearbook theory in yearbook 3?
Yeah, so just informationally, it is actually not advanced yearbook theory, but one is, the basic foundation elements of yearbook. And that predominantly tends to be a lot of 10th graders going in that course. Just to learn what is yearbook about. And if you think about it like a publishing house, they get tasked with the low-end pieces, okay? The second group is kind of like project manager level, yearbook 2 folks. And they'll be putting layouts together. They'll be assigning tasks to yearbook person. This is data be assigned to yearbook 1. This story needs to get covered. That piece needs to happen. The yearbook 3 guys are the editors. They're the ones who really pull the whole book together. We had an interesting meeting at the Berks County principals. Life Touch was pushing their wares. And exclusively around the county, those who try to take on publishing an entire yearbook themselves, bringing it to the actual physical product doesn't work very well. The cost of having Life Touch come in and do the whole thing is pretty cost prohibitive. So, I mean, is it more cost prohibitive than a teacher? Probably not, but we're not dedicating full teacher to it full time. Somebody doing it twice. So.
Well, on that, I mean, it does seem like looking at that schedule between study halls and yearbook, I mean, only 2 English classes are taught out of that 9-period day, which I think is both a waste of talent or a waste of money. But if it is more of a publishing experience these students are getting, I would really be thrilled if we could rebrand that course as publishing. I think that's much more marketable than yearbook because, again, just observing, one of my thoughts is I'd much rather have these students taking a course being able to put together a yearbook. How is that going to prepare you for life? But
more broad-based publishing.
Yeah, that would be a much more high level of academic rigor if changes are, like, again, when I hear yearbook, I think going around taking photographs, putting them together, putting captions on, determining what's in it. But if we are teaching publishing, I think you get more interested in these courses. But going back to yearbooks in general really quickly, and then I'll hand it over to the committee. I did a little search, and I read the Wikipedia entry on yearbooks, and apparently they're not as widespread now as they used to be because of social media, because of the connectivity students can have really with their friends for the rest of their lives. Something like there used to be 2,500 colleges that offered yearbooks, and now it's down to 1,000. So I'm not sure at the high school level if yearbook is becoming a dying species and it might go extinct, but just something, I guess, to be aware of. And then there's also the extracurricular piece, the $3,000 stipend that goes to the yearbook advisor. It just seems like there's a lot of money and a lot of energy and a lot of time being driven to yearbook, which I think is really not all that meaningful. But that's me.
It could certainly morph into a publishing house, social media, because, I mean, hired now to handle corporations, social media,
if you go to the mass media pathway, you'll see that really yearbook is in there. Publishing and publishing design pieces in there. I think a rebranding piece, Mr. Kurtz's point, is on point. Same with developing online social media element of publishing. So I think that's a great point for us to look at.
Publishing and PR, perhaps, because I know PR is a pretty big industry, and I don't know if we have anything in there.
If someone's out there bashing your product on Yelp, you got to go in there and
got to respond. But that was my thought, at least on yearbook, and again, trying to leverage the talent of these professionals. I would, and I know just from speaking with them when I was in high school, they absolutely detested doing lunch duty. They hated it.
Nobody likes it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just really wish that we could, when you're looking at paying somebody $90,000, $100,000, $70,000 for teaching, and then 1/9 of their day they're standing in a smelly room watching kids eat and fight.
I don't think you must get smelly.
Contract. Maybe it changed. The cafeteria, yeah, it's terrible.
No, it's well marked. I think it's but there are 300 kids in a room, and they have to be supervised.
Yes.
What is the best way to do that?
On the study hall front, though, I mean, going back, you have 300 kids in the room for lunch. Looking at the study hall, where they're located in the building, the roster, I mean, you have periods where there are 4 study halls, and if you have over 70 students in one of them, you split it and you have 2 staffers, perhaps. That could be 5 at any time. I really, really think it would make sense fiscally to have these in the auditorium and have 1 or 2 paraprofessionals watching instead of using all this teacher talent and splitting them up.
I will share a concern about the auditorium. Okay. The auditorium is beautiful. For those of you who've been in, I think it's one of the nicest ones around. my experience has been, not in this district particularly, well, we have a few little things, because sometimes we can't get a sub. We do put them in there, with a teacher covering a period. But the damage that happens to auditoriums with students in there is very high. We had problems at Reading, problems at Schuylkill Valley, problems in government. I would caution that.
Have assigned seating.
I would caution it, that's all I'm saying.
I agree with you on that. It's being a VP up there for so long. I understand your point. The second one is teachers as opposed to paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
So,
What about something?
Going to have way more control.
I don't understand. I'm confused by something. I'm not sure if it's because it's not something that you're implying or if it is, and I'm trying to clarify. So I understand why all of us would be, why the teachers and us are uncomfortable with the teachers monitoring lunch. Mm-hmm. What I don't understand is isn't this happening because it's the most cost-effective way to do this right now? Doesn't every other solution require more personnel, so it costs more money? I'm asking the question.
The way that I imagine we'd realize savings is that if we don't have all these teachers watching the cafeteria, we could reduce the teachers at the high school, and we can bring in the paraprofessionals to babysit study.
Do you think that's possible? I'm guessing. How often do teachers actually have lunch duty?
It's a handful of people. We have it for consistency. For example, we have the same two teachers on fourth period for ninth graders, and then occasionally there's a third teacher that's on there every other day. And then there's two teachers. Our junior and senior ones are obviously more mild, and kids understand the routine. They're just more mature. We have less challenge, let's put it that way.
Right.
So the issue of I would caution against reducing the high school teaching staff if you want to effectively continue to deliver the program. As a matter of fact, I would say reallocation of the teaching staff. We currently have 59 teaching staff. We are by far the lowest.
Well, that's my point is just I'm having a hard time envisioning a scenario in which there's any cost savings in reallocating the resources that we currently have.
To have any savings, there would have to be a reduction. It's the only way there would be. So yeah.
All right, so that's...
Yeah, if we were to reallocate and... Now, in terms of getting the most bang for our buck, though, if we were to keep the current staff levels and bring in paraprofessionals, I imagine I want to find the most efficient way to leverage what we have.
You could enrich we could enrich the program in a number of ways. If you wanted paraprofessionals and put them in, and then put the students and teachers in front of students and get more. There's no question about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a variety of things I think you can do.
Right, that's why I said it has to take a much deeper look. This is not something that we ought to do like that. This is something that should take a very deep, broad look on, going back to your point, that if you change the format of the schedule, things can change. I mean, if you don't have to have 9 periods, you have 8 periods, things can change. I mean, but there's a lot of dominoes here. So there's not just one simple answer. I wish there was, but there's not. Everything is going to impact something else.
In terms of...
May I
go ahead.
ask these questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Since you promoted me to superintendent, we can start with positive. I want to congratulate you and the staff on the honor that the high school received. It was one of how many in the state? How many?
Well, let me just spread the love a little bit, really, and not blowing smoke at the board, but you had to approve those courses. Mr. Hankel brought them forward, and then our staff did a very good job encouraging kids to get in those courses, and a good job delivering instruction so they scored 3 or higher. So, with that being said, one of 425 in North America, United States and Canada. We're the only school district in Berks County. We're one of only 40, I think 2 in Pennsylvania that received the AP Honor Roll designation, which essentially this is what we had more students get 3. We increased our percentage of students who scored 3, 4, or 5. And this school year for 2016, we increased our enrollment in those courses. So we have more kids taking the AP, we have more kids doing well in those courses.
And there's something, I don't want to take away from Mr. Martino's time here, but something really important about that is that when we were talking about
changing the threshold to allow more students to get into these classes, dropping what I call the trifecta of you had to have a 92, you had to have a teacher recommendation, and you had to get an A on the final exam. We had teachers and former students saying that if you make these classes easier to get into, the quality is going to go down. The quality of the students taking these courses is going to go down. And this award, from what I understand, is awarded to districts where that doesn't happen, where you expand AP opportunities to more students while maintaining that high quality of performance. So that is a real testament to our students.
Students of poverty to decrease in the program.
Yes.
We've had a conscious effort, you've heard me speak this many times, it happens to be, I care for all students, but I'm specifically locked in on kids of poverty because I don't know that they always have an average. So we have more kids of poverty in the program as well. So we're not really interested in the mindset of people who can't. We're interested in getting people empowered who can. And we have a number of staff members and teachers who believe in that as well, and expanded and extended and meet with kids extra time. You know, they do what's necessary to help these kids get there. So really, it's a credit to their effort.
Yeah. Mr. Martino?
Back to the questions. I was going to spend all day Saturday reviewing the spreadsheets you sent. My wife forced me outside in the snow shovel. But I did read them all this morning, and I went over them number by number. And I would suggest, Mr. Hurl, that the administration, with a couple of members of the curriculum committee, look at the assignment of all the teachers in the high school, because some of them, I think, need to be looked at. And it would take too much time here tonight to go over it teacher by teacher by teacher. I also think the administration needs to talk to the solicitor about what can be done, because right now you have paid professionals paid to teach, teaching 6 out of 9 periods a day. So a third of their day is not spent teaching. Now they've got the contract for prep time, they've got the contract for a paid lunch, but it's that third item that instead of teaching, they're doing a duty. And you've got somebody that has a bachelor's degree or worse, a master's degree, watching kids eat lunch or watching kids in an in-school suspension. And to me, that is an absolute waste of talent and a waste of money, and I think that needs to be looked at. I also think, that Mr. Kurtz had put a lot of time into his what do you call it?
Honors 2.0. That was, again, offering that honors notation.
Right. I think it behooves you to at least sit with him and go over this. You still have the presentation.
Yeah, it's on my Google Drive.
And look at, if anything, can be adopted. And thirdly, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, well, it's my age. But back to the yearbook. Now, Mr. Kurtz and I were discussing this, and even listening to this conversation. If we're having three yearbook classes per day, why do we also have a club?
We don't have three yearbook classes per day. But I understand your point.
Excuse me, isn't that what I saw? 3 periods a day?
That's what I thought. I'm looking at that schedule. It was
that's driven by the enrollment. I thought you meant like we're having yearbook 1, yearbook 2.
No. There are 3 yearbook
4,
sections.
8, 9.
Right. That's how many kids are saying.
Why do we also have clubs? Is my question.
Well, that's a fair question. That's what I inherit. That's what we have.
Well, I think, and I don't know that there's time, and there may be between now and September. But you're saying a lot of this would need to be dug into, even going to 8 periods instead of 9. Right. That would benefit education and not having paid professionals monitoring stuff. I think it's time to start looking at that. So.
All right, we can. Mrs. Reno, public comment.
Yeah, as a former full-time paraprofessional and as a current substitute paraprofessional are viewed very differently at the elementary level by students, at the middle school level, and by the high school level. And I think if you're going to think about putting paraprofessionals into a lunch, an ISS, a study hall, many paraprofessionals, we're invisible to students. They're not even aware that we're around. And I don't know if you're always going to get that authority that you would also get from a teacher that is automatically assumed because they are the teacher, where they would be able to discipline, control, enforce the rules with more authority than some paraprofessionals. Because literally, I've been in classrooms and students have no idea that I'm there. And most of the paraprofessionals at the middle school and high school level are assigned to specific students. They don't have a free period because they're with a student. And we don't have building aids like we used to from way back when we sliced and diced and cut all of the aids down to the bare minimum. And I know you're talking about bringing somebody in for it, but it's just something to think about when you're talking about a paraprofessional versus a teacher, especially at the high school level.
Yeah.
Overseeing 35, 40 kids at a study hall or 300 at lunch.
Thank you. Your point is well taken. I think there are ways we can, I mean, if a student is misbehaving and a paraprofessional steps up and puts an end to the issue, I mean, there are ways to demonstrate authority, I guess, that, I mean, make the paraprofessional's title, I don't know, chief disciplinarian. Of course, that wouldn't be it, but something that connotes the authority that that person has. And if the kids aren't behaving, then the principal gets involved. I think, I don't know, I think there are ways to get around that.
Just one last thought back to Mr. O'Neill's question. I don't have the answers to what you were saying about how would you do it, what would it save, but I think that needs to be studied. I think that needs to be put on paper. Can something be done? Would it benefit? Would it save? And I don't think any of us know. I think it needs to be looked at.
Mr. Hurley had a great point earlier saying everything is there's cost benefit with everything. And the same is true with this. If we were to bring in paraprofessionals and keep the teaching core we have, what would be the cost benefit? If we were to eliminate a few staff but bring in paraprofessionals to do the non-professional work, what would be the cost benefit? I think that would be very beneficial. But were you going to say something to that? I thought I heard. Okay.
It's definitely worth studying, for sure. I mean, I think we should always be challenged ourselves a little more. Before we say, I know we're out of time, I just want to end one last note.
We still have 15 minutes, actually.
I could, you know. But just on a real positive note, we just, last Friday, we had 51 credits, college dual enrollment credits approved. So where last year our students couldn't take any dual enrollment, they now will be able to partner through our partnership with RAP to get 51 college credits going forward, which, just by comparison, you look at $100 a course. That's about 2 years of college. So if any of us can get 2 years of college for our children for $1,500, feel free. It is a phenomenal savings for.
Schedule tomorrow.
I'm going to. I canceled it.
You did cancel it?
Yeah. We'll kind of rebound after these couple days and come back. But the fact that even next year our seniors who will not be able to engage with pathways and other like are going to have a chance to probably leave, if they chose to, with around 15 college credits, which is about a $15,000 savings in those credits. If they take it. So that's just a great opportunity for our kids. So again, thank you guys for approving it, and the partnership is going to do really work.
Now, if there's a way we could incorporate that into what is expected almost, like not turn it into something where you have to go and fill out 15 forms to do it, but turn it into something that, hey, it's the first day of school, fill out this form.
So our guidance counselors and teachers at the end of this week will be in meetings with RAP and the teachers, and we had 11 teachers step up, didn't have to do it, they volunteered, had their credentials, went through a pretty intense vetting process with RAP. It's actually shockingly intense, what it takes to become dual enrolled and be a dual enrolled instructor. But nevertheless, they're going to learn how to basically, with our counselors, do that enrollment the first day in class. And then it goes home to the parent, it comes back, or it goes online with it. So it's much more streamlined than maybe I was expecting.
Good, okay. Well, we kind of transitioned there to a topic that wasn't on the agenda, but we have all this extra time. No problem. Is there any comment, again, from the committee about the study halls? We're moving on the credit. All right. Before going on to public comment, any reflections, I guess, now that we had a full meeting? Anything that, again...
I saw one thing, I have no clue what it means, but in the Reading Eagle today, Conrad Weiser, something that they They got rid of 10 through 12 co-ed gyms. In place of that, they have sports group, some kind of group activity. I no clue what they're doing there, but I saw that. And,
I'll dig into it, find out what they're up to. I haven't heard it.
All right. Any public comment on curriculum and instruction? All right. If nobody objects, the meeting is adjourned at 7:20 p.m. Thank you, everybody.